All right, let's get started again. I understand the cookies will be the last to go from lunch, so help yourself. We're adjusting the afternoon schedule a little bit, starting a little bit after 1 o'clock. We wanted to walk through the next breakout group activity a little bit together as an example, and then get into the breakout group. But I think we'll probably start the actual breakout a little bit earlier than planned. So bear with us as we make some adjustments. Again, we went into this with the framework of what did we do last year? What did we know the situation was? What were some things we could do, and what was done? And here we are again this year. What are we seeing? What are we hearing? The inspectional observation panel, the educational barrier discussions, coming back into a group together and trying to look for connections there. Where were there inspectional observations that overlap with educational barriers, and where can we make some plans to actually improve practice and behaviors? So that's what we're heading into in Breakout Group D, this sort of combination of these two parallel discussions to inform what we're going to do coming out of the meeting and into the next year. So this is a bit of an experiment, and for the AV folks, I'm about to step down to the floor and change to mic 1. All right, so for Breakout Group D, or Breakout Activity D, let's all, as a room, think of one inspectional observation and some of the educational barriers that we felt might overlap with it. Anybody can offer one up. If not, I'll offer one. Wes, you're ready. Yeah.
And this really, I don't know if Liz is still here or not. Anyway, I think something that's really important, and most states maybe do this, I don't know, is that having an annual meeting with your inspectors and the extension group and finding out what the inspectors are seeing so you can massage your training to cover those aspects. And I know in our case it's lacking. That's why I said I don't know if Liz is still here. I'm not criticizing the department. But I think that's something that's very important.
Great, thank you.
So mine comes from our discussion yesterday, which was about risk prioritization. So what we found is there's a lot of growers and there's a lot of things that they could be doing, and getting them to work on prioritizing which one of those is going to be actually the most impactful on their farm versus what they just hear a lot about. So somebody brought up the example of a grower who wanted to chlorinate the water that they were going to use to drip irrigate, which is great because they had heard that water is a really big issue, but they had fundamental sanitation problems in their packing house. Let's focus on where the biggest impact is going to be. So how do we teach growers about risk prioritization, and how do we give them tools for that? Especially since it's going to be different on every single farm. And good luck to everybody whose responsibility that is.
Let's run with that as a group. Thank you, Audrey. So risk prioritization was how I heard it summarized. Risk prioritization on farm. So what's the problem? Audrey, I think you summed it up as people investing in something that may not be the highest risk or highest priority. And so they've got limited time, limited money. What the problem is, maybe it's not going to the most important thing. So what's the educational need or needs? Okay, be a little more specific. Knowledge about what, Hans?
Well, the issue seems to be that it's an unknown, it's a black box. What is the risk? And we may or may not know. So then you're trying to make a decision about whether to spend $10,000, but you don't actually know what it's going to do. So how can you do a cost-benefit analysis?
Okay, fair enough. So an educational need might be understanding the relative risk.
Yeah, relative risk research, if we know it.
Okay. Okay. Other educational needs? Around this. Prioritization. How would you prioritize something? Yep. Elizabeth, can you get another mic? Yeah, thanks. Yeah, Gary?
Yeah, I think we talked about this yesterday, and there's so many gray areas, and there's a lot of scientific knowledge, which focuses this way, but it's always important to look at the holistic picture. So making that balance to help resolve the areas of gray is critical, I think.
Thank you. So, relative risk, cutting through the areas of gray, uncertainty, working with uncertainty. Sorry, Wendy?
That's exactly what.
Okay, great. Risk uncertainty. Yeah. Gordon?
Crop-based risk, which crops are going to be the riskiest? So sweet corn, are we going to focus on hydrocooler and sweet corn, your hydrocooler and your snap beans? So.
Thank you. Somebody over here? Okay. Relative risk of crops, maybe crop-specific practices. Other educational needs?
I would just say not jumping to conclusions. There could be many different solutions to whatever problem or risk is identified. So trying to be open-minded, and I think that includes for the inspectors as well. Maybe getting some outside perspective on it and some feedback.
Thanks.
Maybe a hazard analysis from the biological, chemical, and physical perspective, especially if they want to go into value added.
So, starting to venture into maybe learning objectives, right? The student understands the difference between hazard and risk. No? You wouldn't think so?
I think we see, at least in Maryland, some of the smaller folks a little confused on what a risk versus a hazard is, and just taking time to understand that so they can do what we're asking them better on, especially with some of the ag water pieces.
So we agree that it's important to differentiate hazard and risk? Is that, okay, good. I'm glad we agree. Yeah.
So what does the research tell us the relative hazards or risks are between drip irrigation and post-water or post-harvest water application directly to the fruit? I think I know the answer, but that's what should be taught. Sure.
So again, risk uncertainty. Are there places where we have research findings that can actually be leveraged to bring clarity? So start thinking, as Hans gets set up, start thinking about what are some approaches, some educational approaches. They're starting to creep in, which is awesome, but what are some educational approaches to this that might be helpful?
One approach would be to pair relative risk with a possible or potential benefit. So, for example, overhead irrigation, there's a risk, which is a relative risk. It could be very high, actually. And then if you move to drip, well, there's a cost to that, but there's multiple benefits that could come with drip irrigation. And it's important to pair those two things together if you're making a recommendation so growers actually can see more than just the running away from something logic and also what they're running towards.
So Hans, can we keep running with that just for a minute? So let's say you're designing an educational experience to address that. In your mind, I know you've had the idea for 15 seconds, but in your mind, what does it look like? What does it feel like? How would you do it?
On the spot, man.
Emergent curricula? Yeah. You got it.
I think making it situational. So, growers in the room, how many of you are doing overhead irrigation? And then if you imagine a situation putting someone on the spot to think about if they're making a switch, what that would look like, why. So, actually following the situation, and then what are the benefits and having in a situation so you're always thinking about or talking about change is hard or it always costs something, and we make changes on the farm because of a multiple array of things. And what are those things? So in any given situation, take an actual example and then set up what the problems are or risk, and then what are the multiple benefits in this specific situation, have people ping pong off of that or something like that. So it could be quick, but actually bringing it to light in an actual training with an actual person on the spot, like me.
So specific contextual example that you walk through, maybe? Mm-hmm. Other ways we might approach this. Educational approaches. Think about workshops you've been in where it really clicked for you, or other times where something really clicked for you. What made it happen?
I mean, the PSA is very good at this. I mean, they have a whole section on assessing risk, and I mean, people take those books home. I mean, I really encourage. I always tell farmers the PSA helps you think in a food safe way. It helps you think of routes of contamination, and it's got a section about, or talk about risk versus hazard and risk and what that is, and gets you. I mean, it exists, telling people to refer back to the books, to the training.
Do we have a way that people have an open forum? You can ask questions and everybody can post solutions and pictures, and do we have that?
The Food Safety Resource Clearinghouse exists to serve some of that need. We are currently exploring an opportunity to make it way more visual with photographic specific, with a photo specific interface, and really try to facilitate farmer offered solutions to share that way. Yep, Facebook, yep, social media. Yeah, Deb?
Some of the farmers that I've worked with that seem to be the most successful from my subjective standpoint is where they've done a scatter plot to see what crops are actually giving them the best worth for their time to put that crop in, and then overlaying that conditions of more drought-type conditions, and then choosing crops that are more apt to be successful, so then you have a little more money then to do the things you might need to help that crop be more successful. So having that kind of knowledge that farmer has be shared with other farmers, it's a peer sharing of knowledge, and I think that speaks strongly to a lot of the farms, because you're not talking at them, they're receiving it in a sharing way.
So the last 2 points feel to me like there's a really good opportunity for peer-to-peer learning relative to risk, and learning how somebody else went through something and how they landed where they landed. Great.
Yeah, just a thought along those lines. Talking about drip versus overhead, you're reducing risk. I think you may lay the drip line, but when you first put the seed in, you want the germination with sort of overhead. So I mean, it's still risk reduction, but you're using both. But you're doing the overhead earlier. Yeah.
Yep. So the nuance of it, yeah. When is a specific practice being applied? Great point. Yeah. So other times, specific educational approaches have really clicked for you as a learner. Yeah.
Always tours where you actually go and see what people are doing on their farm and be able to talk to them.
When we set up plots at the farms, but we still have the power of the research and having the data to back up what we are researching. But then we have also their experience in what you are doing. So I found that the most powerful tool, because we had the data and we had the talker, and we could use both.
Thank you. Great.
And I would say here, I know the PSA was just mentioned, but I think most of us in the PSA would agree, and I think many of you would think also that the PSA is one way to like dump a lot of information at one time, but it is definitely not the best approach from an adult education learning. Like, you have a resource to look at after, but it's 8 hours of intense information is not the best way. But I think to answer this question, I would put maybe the best time is when that information is actively needed. So when growers are thinking like, oh, I need information on this specific thing. I know a lot of people now are talking about ag water and concerns. So it's in the front of their mind. They're, very receptive to information at that time. And oftentimes that's the best time. So those topic specific workshops, when they need it. But I think having the nimbleness to then address that information and give it when it's needed is one of the difficulties.
Piggybacking on what Donna just said, I'm working with a farmer, and I've been asking questions of Donna and Chris and Hans, and so I'm learning at the same time as the farmer about the certificate of compliance and what that means for BASOS, because we hear about it at a training ourselves, and we're not quite sure what does that really mean, and what are all the ins and outs, and does there need to be an actual analysis result, a report, an analysis report? Does the farmer have to have that? So I like it when I'm working directly with the farmer on a specific issue, and we dig into it together, and then I learn at the same time as them, and then we can bring all of that to another farm.
Great. Other thoughts on this? Anybody have any brainstorms of, like, if you were writing the scope of work for a project proposal that would address this is like really testing everybody. Okay, 5 seconds, write a proposal. What might that look like? Just pick one of these things, one of these approaches, or sell it. Right? Wes and Billy said yesterday we don't do sales very well. Well, here's a chance. Thank you. I'll wait all day.
I think just to follow up on some of the points that have already been made, farmers, I think, trust other farmers. So, and they're very solutions-driven. And oftentimes, if they haven't implemented something, it's because they haven't found a way to do it. So if we can, do a better job at, highlighting those good examples, because farmers, they're always trying to Google things, they're going to be do-it-yourself. So if we can create content that are from other farmers, showcasing whatever solutions that they have, and also somehow pay them for doing it.
Yeah, I'm in on this farmer-to-farmer learning, but in a space where it is, I don't want to say overseen, but has input from trained and knowledgeable professionals. So is there a space on the clearinghouse for farmer-to-farmer learning that, maybe an educator can drop in and say, actually, we have a resource for that, or that solution might not be quite right. Here's something else that we can tie in there. So is there space within a controlled or with access for educators, regulators, trained professionals to help with some of that farmer-to-farmer learning without being patronizing or directing the farmer-to-farmer learning?
Yeah, great opportunity for different modes of delivering the information. I'd like to piggyback on Thelonious' suggestion of, connecting the dots with peer-to-peer learning, and, using case studies where somebody's done something and it's been successful. And maybe there's a bit of a review process of how, and frankly, that can also make it easier to collect that information sometimes. Not taking it over, not stealing it, but can we facilitate sharing of that somehow? I'd fund that, for sure, if only I had funding.
That's what I was going to say. If we create a farmer-to-farmer resource bucket, and I mean, this really echoes a lot of the work that you and Andy are doing already with the tours, and they tend to pick up different things. But if this information is gathered in that way, then before it's posted, then it automatically is. It's kind of like the people who gather it are in the food safety community, and so that this is actually furthering the education of the person who's offering the material as well. It's like, I have often heard, someone say, "Hey, you're 90% there. Do this," and it's like it's gold. And so I think that you're helping both sides of that coin by creating some kind of you already have the clearinghouse of it, but some kind of farmer to farmer exchange.
So I want to kind of bring this home maybe, and Elizabeth, plug your ears, but maybe day one of NECAFs next in 2024 is facilitated farmer to farmer sharing. Maybe we have a conference day that's really just focused on what has been done and why was it successful? What was the challenge? How did you approach it? How did you navigate risk uncertainty to arrive at that decision? I think it's something we've been hesitant to do as a group, and we in Baltimore we did have a farmer panel, buyer panel, and a processor panel. But I'm wondering if maybe we're at a point now where some of that really situational, specific learning needs to come back in. Lisa.
This is just sort of reiterating what was just said a few times, but just building on that you could have, one of the things I just suggested on my evaluation was that we could think now about, as we go out into the field this season, taking pictures of things that seem really innovative or challenging, or like that someone might have ambivalence about, like, I'm not sure if this is risky or a great idea, and take pictures of those things and then come prepared next year with a lot of those pictures. Just have it in our minds now to keep our eyes out for those kinds of things. But then also to do maybe some kind of like grower innovation challenge or something like that, to have growers be incentivized, maybe through grant funds or something else, to submit on their own some of the things that they think are great ideas, and maybe they would be encouraged to work with their local extensions and stuff like that to vet them beforehand, so they don't submit something and have a regulator say, "Oh my God, you did that." Just really incentivizing the sharing of those kinds of very specific and kind of targeted solutions to some of these problems that we are looking at.
I'd like to piggyback too on this, what exactly we're saying or talking about. It's really cool kind of coming up with ideas with a lot of people for projects, proposals. So I feel like we in Vermont have kind of hit on this tip of the iceberg thing of actually using not only case studies, but simple case studies, and then some bits of materials or tools or equipment or resources that are actually physical, but they're not too expensive, and they double as an educational material. So imagine combining this peer-to-peer learning with the mentor peers being early adopters of certain things that include this equipment, and then you buy pieces of things, whether it be like, sanitizer dispensers or whatever, but there's case studies attached, and then the project is really just hooking up and getting this material to other peer farmers, and having the mentor peer farmers actually help or go visit or online or whatever, do a peer-to-peer sharing around a case study that's focused on particular best practice or adopting a particular best practice that we can help by supplying some material for. So you line up a lot of different things in a row, both some material, peer-to-peer stuff, and then review probably from the produce safety experts to get a lot of adoption of some good practices that are specific on farms.
Okay. So what we just went through together is what's hoped for as part of Breakout D. So that was one example. Audrey, thank you for offering up that example. One example of something we might need to address. And in Breakout C, before lunch, you identified a bunch of things at your tables that were issues that could be addressed. So using the same sort of approach, walking through in Breakout D, what are some solutions you might use to address that issue? What are some of the what is the specific educational need? What was the actual problem? And what can we do about it? That's the intent for the rest of the day until 3 o'clock. There's a scheduled break that was originally scheduled for 1:40. I believe you can just plan to take that kind of whenever your table feels like taking it. So I would suggest at this point we get back into our Breakout CD tables. There may be some table consolidation happening. We had some people who had to leave, so if you're feeling a little bit lonely at your table, you can find one that's less lonely. Elizabeth, anything you want to add? So we're back into breakout mode. Appreciate everybody's engagement on that last exercise. I honestly wasn't sure how it would go, and it was great from my perspective. Thank you. All right. As Elizabeth said, we're going to accelerate the afternoon schedule a little bit, and we're going to mash up a couple of planned things. Our overall closing remarks and reflections, and we're going to also mix that in with specifically Breakout D report out. And anybody who was at the NECAF's annual meeting virtually last year, I think that's when we first started this, will remember that we did our final report out by state nickname. So hopefully we still have at least one person from every state present, and if I miss your state, please let me know and just stand up and report anyway. So the ask is I'll ask for somebody by state nickname, and then what we're looking for is a little bit of one or two things coming out of this most recent breakout session, and then also any reflections you have on the past 2 days, or even 2.5 days. So no pressure, whatever you feel like sharing. So we'll start with our host, the Nutmeg State. Do we have anybody from Connecticut still in the room? You got to be kidding me. There we go. Thanks, Kate.
Hi. So, let's see. Yeah, maybe I want your notes, actually. So we had cleaning and sanitizing. Yes, and so we kind of broke it up into detergents and sanitizers and some of the issues and potential solutions to those issues that we saw. So I can take it over. Yeah.
Great. Legibility of the reporting of the records, maybe.
Sorry, I can barely read it, so we'll see what happens.
Is that a laminated poster you got there?
What's that?
Is that a laminated poster for records you got there? Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So we talked about, we were cleaning and sanitizing. We talked about sanitizers, but also detergents and how there's confusion about both of those things. So we talked about detergents and how there's confusion not just among growers, but also among regulators and educators about what is an appropriate detergent to use for different purposes. And we came up with a plan mostly for Andy to do a sort of performance test using some major commonly found brands that have different ingredients to test them against a sort of matrix of common soil types, clay versus sandy soil, that kind of thing, and more the broader use of the word soil, the different things that might be contaminants on your bins or whatever. So looking at different soil types, but also different crop types, like squash goop was one of the contaminants that we talked about. And also thinking about how people are going to use these. So if you have like a machine that might create a lot of suds and maybe you don't want that. So thinking about non-foaming detergents versus foaming detergents and when is an appropriate use for these different things. And coming up with a sort of wire cutter style breakdown of commonly found detergents, when you might pick one over the other, and so that we can all have a better understanding. What was that?
The most important part is that Andy's going to do this in a Mythbuster style,
cool.
renegade video format to make it very appealing to both educators and growers.
There may be a game show involved with wheels.
Great.
So that was about detergents, and then sanitizers. We thought there was still some, not just confusion, definitely confusion about cleaning versus sanitizing, but specifically with sanitizers, understanding that they break down over time based on how you're using them and the different, organic matter and that kind of stuff that might be present, and trying to come up with some way to better visualize that breakdown, and better understand this, better explain to growers and, again, amongst educators and inspectors as well, what the mode of action of different sanitizers is and how to understand when it's effective and when it's not likely to be still effective. And also maybe presenting information about sanitizers using fewer products, the products that people are most likely to have, like just really talking about Sanidate and bleach among growers those are the two things that they might likely to buy. And then leaving things like, automated quaternary ammonium systems for people who are a little more sophisticated and not even bringing that up at the outset. That's what we talked about.
Great.
Anything else?
Indu.
Did you want a couple of takeaways from Connecticut as well?
I was just going to offer that, like Lisa stole Connecticut's thunder, but go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, no, okay. Well, this being my first NECAFS meeting, I really did appreciate all the information that was shared at this meeting. And a couple of takeaways were, it was nice to know that we're not alone in all of our issues that we're having. So, thank you.
Great. Welcome. Thanks for being here. Indu, did you want to add? So we're still with the nutmeg state.
Yes. I mean, that's a punishment for being in our state. But thank you all so much for driving all the way from New England and around. I'm so glad that this was done here. NECAFS has always been so supportive, and Elizabeth and Chris are like the most approachable people. It has been great working with them for the last couple of years. They not at all intimidating like other conferences that we might go to. So this has, as expected, this has been a great meeting. I'm so glad it's in Connecticut. I live 20 minutes away. I'll give you a kidney, Elizabeth, maybe. But so my reflections are that it's been so interactive. I have not seen any other meeting for food or poultry, for anything that's so interactive and so involved. And you feed us so well. You really do. I mean, that goes
Great.
without saying. So those are my reflections. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Maybe we will run to the full time. This is feeling good so far. All right, so Lisa opened up the door for the Bay State, otherwise known as the Old Colony State. That's Massachusetts, folks.
Do you want... Is this takeaways? You want takeaways from the conference?
And also from Breakout D.
Oh. I'm just handing it.
We were talking about, for the breakout room, we were talking about, we're from the Bay State. We were talking about, for worker training, we were talking about integrating food safety possibly with our partners that do the pesticide training and the OSHA training. So many farmers want all that information delivered at once. If it seems like pesticide training has been implemented in the space fairly well, so perhaps as a way to to tag along with that with other state partners or third parties to try and make sure that food safety is a component of all those things. That's what we talked about. We also talked about aging professional wrestlers for a long time.
Oh, yeah?
Murderers, the city of Worcester, human composting. But other than that, yeah, it was great.
Which aging professional wrestlers?
What's his name, Jim?
Uh-huh.
Nikolai
yeah.
Volkov.
Yeah. No. You know you're in WWF territory, right? Hartford? Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, right. Okay. Whew. That was a tangent. And Andre opened up the door for the Granite State.
So he already went? Andre already went?
Yep, but also right behind you.
You want New Hampshire?
Oh.
Vicky?
No,
Wendy?
not Vicky.
Andre, do you want to go? Okay. I'm happy to. So I think we forgot we were part of the cleaning and sanitizing group, and we just, no, we're good. We still kept on track the entire time, and we just answered what the question D, and I'm pointing at the screen, but it's no longer there, and we are looking at solutions, and I'm forgetting exactly how it was worded up there. Lindsay has notes, but I think, Lindsay, you can help me out if I'm not actually speaking to it accurately, but I think one of the things we talked about was we took the idea of risk prioritization and the case studies, and we kind of merged that. Instead of looking at just risk prioritization maybe around a given practice, what could it be like to look at risk prioritization on the entire farm and have a case study that reflected on all of the potential, which I think that was already part of the conversation. We were just kind of teasing it out a little bit more and thinking about how that could be done in practice, actually, with the case studies, and maybe that's your first, third, 5-year plan about implementing food safety over time and different options around that. So how could you have that video or case study for that particular purpose? So Lindsay, I don't know, Gary, Audrey, did that kind of... We're going to hold tight for Maryland, because there'll be more Pennsylvania.
Yeah, totally. Great.
When we get there is what I'm hearing from this group to further that idea. In terms of reflections, Andre, do you want to just do a reflection? You look very happy over there, so I'd say happiness. Happiness. It was great to see people. It was great to see people connect, hear different ideas. The exchange is invaluable. I'll just leave it at that.
Great. Thanks, Wendy. Do we have anybody left from the first state, the Diamond State? Does anybody know which one that is? Delaware?
Did you see that they kind of walked out, right?
They knew.
Doing the, saying that each state was going to report, and then they left as a group.
All right. How about Billy's gone? I had the Peach State down here. Also known as the Empire State of the South. I didn't know that. Georgia, yeah. Ellen is next door. I had the Hoosier State here. Annie is next door. All right, Pine Tree State. Yeah, Lindsay. Awesome. It's Maine.
Everybody else abandoned me. The storm was scary, I guess. I probably should have left too. I don't really know how to sum up our last conversation. We kind of went all over the place. We were talking about audits and funding models and farmer food safety awareness and trying to connect the dots with, but it's a big project, big thing to tackle. And I don't feel like we came up with the answers, but that's okay. We had some good conversations.
Good.
So, yeah. Drive safe, everyone.
Cullen, are you still based in Maine? Yeah. Do you want to offer anything?
I don't know why I feel weird speaking from Maine, just because I live there. But anyway, I mean, I'm born and raised in Maine, so that's fine. I took the microphone. I don't know that I have a lot else. I mean, I think what I always look for, really more than getting to speak my mind about something, is to listen. And I've had so much to just ruminate on and hope that something positive comes out of that. I mean, I know it will, but it comes to something. Just the new ideas, even at this point, having been in produce since the rule for a number of years now, I'm still hearing new and good ideas and new areas that need attention. I am grateful for that.
Thank you, Colin. Moving on to the Free State, or the Old Line State. Yeah. It's the Queen City, right? But it's...
Or the Old Bay State.
Yeah.
So, for me personally, I got to listen to other people's thoughts around worker training, and I think that's going to help our team as we continue to work on our USDA grant on this topic. So, thanks.
Lindsay? Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah.
My entire table left me, but I guess I would just say what everybody else has said, and I think the conversations were really invaluable this week. And in terms of what we talked about, we had a very heavy Department of Ag focus at my table, and we spent a lot of time talking about incentivizing change. With Delaware's Watermelon Bus Project, spent a lot of time talking about funding and ways to impact change based on providing funding and enhancing quality in ways other than food safety per se, which is what their goal was with the watermelon buses. And we came up with a number of different examples of ways to guide workshops by providing things like water treatment kits and walking through that troubleshooting and sending people away with workshop materials, things like sanitizer strips, talking about like bleaching of sanitizer strips and all that good stuff. And then we also talked a little bit about incentivizing change through like pesticide credits, and we went back to that farmer discussion.
Thanks, Donna. Anybody here from the Show Me State? Yes. Yeah.
Well, what I got out of this is a whole bunch of new friends, right?
Yeah.
And if y'all don't cheer, I'm going to say everybody that left, they would have. So I guess that's good. Show Me State. I thanked you guys earlier, but I think what I got out of this is that there's still a ton of opportunity for education and outreach to our growers, to our states, to our educational. We have to be trained ourselves occasionally and retrained. I learned it from you day one. We're not all experts, right? And so we have to continue to grow and to retrain ourselves and not to get stuck in our own way. I think a lot of times, especially whenever I was in Missouri, we were doing it the same way, and then we'd hear an approach from another state and go, how in the world did we not think of that? That makes total sense. And that's what conferences like this do. So thank you guys for having us.
Thanks for being with us, Ben. The Garden State. Andre might have to represent. I know Wes and Meredith had to take off.
Yeah, Liz was...
Okay.
As a Rutgers alum, I have to say, I'm disappointed in my colleagues. They were going out of the weather. No excuse. But typical Jersey, I'll just say that.
They lead in other ways. All right. Empire State.
So we had equipment, tools, and buildings, but we lost our moderator. So instead, we talked about Amish growers.
All right.
Like you would think we would. So we talked about the different growing issues that we see in these communities, which include health and hygiene, working animals, water quality is usually unknown. You have a lot of children out doing harvesting, basically just the cultural differences that we see on our perspectives of food safety. So we thought to try to combat this, we have to try to make food safety a selling point, because they see quality as important because that equals sales, but we need a way that they can see that food safety can equal sales as well. So we want to, try to make some education for these communities that they do see food safety as a way to improve their quality and the shelf life, and also to, work with the communities to do trainings themselves, to get them trained to do grower trainings. And we definitely want to have people in the community that went through the inspections themselves so they know how the process goes. And as reflections from New York, I would say this reminds us that we're all in the same boat. We all have the same problems. We all have the same issues. And it's nice just to talk with people and just try to solve those problems together, because we are in it together. And, it's great to, just have people to reach out to and solve these problems together. So thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Oh, Laura, behind you.
So y'all said to get creative. So during our discussions, there were some situations where we kind of veered off and had to remind ourselves where this was tying all back to. And our first point was this whole concept of the food safety culture that we'd been talking about, and it had come up a bunch of different times. So we started thinking about introducing this early learning of food safety culture from the student side, so 4-H, FFA kind of things, and thinking about where maybe the workforce or the upcoming generations might be coming from. So having that food safety culture come all the way from farm to school kind of situation. We talked about farmer to farmer learning. Some of, I guess, our ideas here were maybe after grower meetings have an annual needs report or an assessment come out of these grower meetings, something coming from growers themselves instead of practitioners surrounding them, what they need the most help with specifically. And then a really fun idea that came out was worker training throughout the growing season. So on specific duties, performing maybe once a week, maybe once a day, a 5 to 10 minute, very short and sweet. That kind of follows the growing season. So going along and really tying back to the specific duties that the workers are performing. So that was that. And I really liked Chris's perspective from the New York group over there, that we are all in this together. So that was nice. Thank you.
Thanks, Laura. Other Empire State? Okay. How about the Keystone State?
Let's see. We, of course, covered the micro and macro aspects of food safety in a few minutes. But one of the, basically building the food safety culture, but one of the micros, which was kind of interesting, was a discussion about the greens harvester that some of you may be aware of. I just bought one, and of course, sitting next to me said, "Well, how do you clean those? You flail things?" And it's like, "Uh-oh, Andy, help." So anyway, have to relook at that. I know the blade, at least I bought the one that the blades come apart and you can clean them easily. Yeah. So the earlier version, you couldn't do that. But anyway, in terms of the overall, I started, I guess, in 2017, applied for a local food safety collaborative. I'm representing Pennsylvania Farmers Union, so, worked with National, who was the lead on that. So that's how I got my, feet wet into food safety. And I just, coming to this conference, I came that year and essentially every year since. But it's my touchstone because I'm not always doing food safety. We've done several training programs with this woman. We also did the video series on the clearinghouse, putting on your food safety lenses, which actually speaks to a few things that we discussed here today, and does have some of that peer-to-peer development. So anyway, this is a touchstone, very valuable, and it kind of tunes me into where we are every year. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, I think that what was really reinforced for me today was thinking about sustaining change in behavior and adoption of practices, this idea of approaches to food safety, hazard reduction that have multiple benefits and value by design, they achieve more than one objective. So it could be financial, it could be efficiency, it could be reducing plant pathogens, whatever it may be. But that's the kind of thing that farmers will actually remember and put into practice and not feel resentful about. One of the other really cool thing about this is I brought along 4 people with me to this conference who, one of them has been to the conference before, the others haven't, and they're hopefully going home. Ruth, are you feeling inspired? The others have already left, but I know Thelonious has this whole plan for an FSOP proposal now that's going to be farmer-driven, black farmer-driven, actually. So, yeah, that's very exciting for me, not to have to think it all up by myself.
Thanks, Lindsay. Anybody from the Sunshine State? Yay.
So thank you for having me. Our group actually did talk about cleaning and sanitizing this time. So a couple of things that we took from this is obviously I won't say that. Sanitizing doesn't mean cleaning, and sometimes we have a problem on farms with them understanding that. And to just share a couple of things that really came out of this is giving them some examples, trying to help them understand what we're talking about. And one of them is to have some analogies in your back pocket of, instead of just using mouthwash, for your teeth, you brush your teeth. What was another one?
Using hand sanitizer when your hands are dirty.
Yeah, you want to wash your hands with soap instead of just using sanitizer when they're dirty. So if you have a few things in your back pocket, they go, oh, I get what you mean. So we talked a little bit about that. Another one down here, let me pull it up, is really empowering the employees and allowing them to be part of the processes. One of the great ideas that came out from this is using a buddy system. When you've got something like, setting up a sanitizer or testing sanitizers and things like that, if you've got a problem with retention of employees or training of employees and things like that, if you've got a buddy system, you've got somebody there that can hold them accountable, and you're making sure that it's going right. And if it's not going right, somebody goes, hey, I don't think that's the way you did it, or hey, maybe we better check. So that was something that came out, and I thought it was a good idea. I just want to thank you for letting us come. I feel like I see... I'm Brenda Morris, so I've seen so many people here that I've collaborated with for the last 3 years and have been part of what you've done, and you've been part of some of the things that AFTO has done. We appreciate that, and I always learn so much from the groups in this area and appreciate the collaboration that the states, as well as NECAFs, with AFTO and with me. So thank you for having us.
Thanks for being with us. The Ocean State. Rhode Island?
Is that Rhode Island?
Yeah, it is.
We're the Bay State. Sorry. You missed it, Michael. Yeah.
So our group was a little bit all over the place. I believe we originally started with tools, equipment, and building and sanitation, but ultimately where we landed on was the importance of connecting with the farmer and building that trust with them so that when they have issues with their building, cleaning, sanitation, they're willing to come to us and work on a solution together. And it just continues to build that network of trust, that network of progress and education. And so one example that we had was where a farmer had issues with algae in their irrigation water, and so they came to us and said, hey, we have this issue, how can we best address it? And frankly, we said, that's a really good question, but I bet you're not the only one. And through events like this, we had the network connections to be able to reach out and say, hey, we know you're an educator and a specialist in this area. Would you be willing to work with our grower in our state and find something, and then be able to take that information as a next step and then provide it to the public through things like the clearinghouse and through sharing of information in our normal meetings, so that other growers who are in other states continue to see the progress and continue to have availability to those answers. So then as far as key takeaways for our state, I would say, I would echo again, just building the network, building the relationships, seeing so many new faces here, and having people to reach out to say, hey, have you seen this issue? Have you been able to work with a farmer to build that food safety culture? And how have you done it? And feeding off each other and continuing to build off those ideas is just irreplaceable and something I think we'll all take home with us.
Thanks, Chris. Rhode Island, also known as Little Rhodey, apparently. Who said that? You don't know about that? I didn't know about it until this morning. But yeah. You're not sure? All right, fact check me. That's fine. Green Mountain State. Andy and Anna?
So my reflections are that the work is still lots to do. There are a lot of great resources out there, but there's still a lot of work in distributing and sharing the resources that are available. And there's still a lot of work in order to connect the dots on farms to clear up the confusion. So it's, I guess, a bit, I don't want to say comforting, but reassuring that they're still motivating. That's the word I'm looking for. That there's still more resources to develop, and there's still more resources to share amongst our own peers to help clarify all these common issues.
Thanks, Andy. Anna, any thoughts?
I would second all of that and say that I had a really good time meeting with all of you guys being new to food safety. It was really interesting hearing a lot of different perspectives and hearing from inspectors and regulators and the like I'm typically in the educator realm, so it was really interesting hearing those perspectives.
Thanks, Anna. Anybody from the Mountain State? West Virginia? I think they took off. Okay. How about the district? Hey.
We go by the swamp.
I almost did that, but
it's fine.
That's you. Yeah.
My table stole most of what we talked about, so I'm going to talk about what DC talks about very well, which is money and government processes. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Audrey. I work for USDA as the liaison to FDA. So two things that I learned. One, not enough of you know about the food safety certification for specialty crop program. Is that a mouthful? Sure. Do we have an acronym? You betcha. FSCSC.
That's better.
So that is $2 million for growers who are small or very small, who get any food safety certification. Yes, we wrote state certification into the program, so Massachusetts, Vermont, Maryland, all of you in your state programs, that counts. Growers get their audit paid for, their water tests, their product tests, their soil tests, their consultant fees, all of that. So if your state doesn't know about it, or your growers don't know about it, you can find me, or you can go to FSA. The other money that I want to talk about, because Jody left and I'm going to speak on her behalf. She did leave, right? Yeah. All right. I'm going to speak on her behalf, is the FSOP program and the fact that all of you should be involved in the FSOP program. I know many of you as educators get the money. But one of the other ways that educators and regulators can work together is at being on the review panel. As Jody said, the review panel for the FSOP program doesn't have to be PhDs and academics. Please serve on the review panel. That Then you know what projects are being worked on, what projects are being funded, and you have influence on funding those projects. And you don't also have to be an academic. You can work for a community organization to be on that review panel. And if you are an educator, you don't always have to put in those grants yourself. Please, the community-supported community organizations can put in grants, and then it's not on you guys. Just help them write their grant applications. So that's my pitch for money, okay? That's what I got.
So other than the good feels from being on a review panel, what would you say are some of the benefits?
Money. You get paid.
Okay.
It's not a lot of money. I'm not going to lie. It's like below minimum wage. But sure.
So it was really fascinating to be on the peer review panel. I learned a lot about what other people were doing. I learned about how to write a better proposal and how not to write a proposal. And it gave me a lot more confidence, actually, that what I was doing was heading in the right direction. And it's an amazing it's an amazing panel of people. It's really multidisciplinary, I'm just coming as a community-based educator, everything up to super academic types. Sorry, people. And it was also very diverse culturally as well, which was really fun and exciting.
If you've ever complained about reviewer feedback or a decision on one of your own proposals, here's your chance. Right? I think I've gone through my entire list. Did I miss anybody? Would anybody like to offer something? So, yeah, they were next door. Welcome back. Annie, Ellen? Anything you'd like to add? And yeah, you can answer whatever question you want. That's kind of where we're at.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Anna.
Reflections on past 2 days.
Yeah, well, I have to say, so I've been to 2 remote kneecaps, and this is my first in person, and truly my best takeaway has been just the chance to really put names to faces and meet everyone and connect. I think there's a really specific energy that comes with this community, and it's something that I've been very grateful to become a part of and really see the productivity and the collaboration that's come out of this particular meeting.
And I think, did we get the Cornhusker State back?
I think he left.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Nope. There we go. There we are. What's your take?
Well, I'm eating, but
okay, great.
Let me sip my coffee first.
The Cornhusker State is also known as the beef state.
It is known as the beef state.
Just trying to buy you
there's
some
more
time.
beef cattle than people in the state of Nebraska. That's factual. Well, thanks for having me. This has been a phenomenal meeting. First time attending a NECAFS meeting. Lots of new people, of course, coming from Nebraska. Lots of new regulators that are in states in New England. Seeing presentations from EFSA projects that I'm not particularly familiar with, that are outside of my region, has been really enriching. So yeah, new collaborations, new people, new friends. So thanks so much for having me.
It's great to have you. Thanks. Yeah, please, Chuck.
Thank you. So, I just would like to say I've been to many conferences in my life, conventions. I've never been to anything like this in my life. I mean, I've never met so many open, caring, sharing people. When you're in the private sector or the profit center, you go to these events and no one's trying to help you. No one's talking to you about what they did that worked, because they're not going to share that stuff. This has been a truly unique experience. And I just want to thank every one of you, because it's been very enjoyable. Thank you.
Thanks for being with us, Chuck. Any other last thoughts? Elizabeth, you want to help us wrap up?